Tego, te wakwego. Today's capsule, I wanted to talk a little bit about what I refer to as the long road. The long road from a year ago. It started around December, where the first cases out of Wuhan, China. Shortly after that, the World Health Organization was advised that there was a big problem brewing that was starting to get out of hand in China. And we see things evolve between January, February, March. Coming into early March, we started seeing how serious this thing was becoming. Infection rates were getting worse and it was spreading. So we come up to March 23rd, where the Mohawk Council started looking at this problem and how it may affect Kanesatake. So the Mohawk Council, as a precaution, declared a state of emergency, suspending many activities and programs, and adopting the pandemic laws that we saw might very well be necessary. So through that resolution, the ERU was created, the Emergency Response Unit. Now, the Emergency Response Unit started this whole thing with, there was no policies, there was some, but not enough to deal with something of this magnitude. So they worked long hours, days, even weeks, trying to adjust and trying to find the right resources to try to deal with this threat to our community. So once everything was put in place with the policies and the procedures that the ERU would have to implement, we started looking at how do we protect this community. One of the first actions was to block off any access to the communities and asking our businesses within Kanesatake to voluntarily close down until we get a good idea where we're going with this. Now, following that, the province had already gone into a lockdown, and the lockdown closed down the economy. So for a certain period of time, this was the norm. Now, ERU had created the ACT team. ACT team had as its responsibility to help safeguard our community by limiting the access into our community by outsiders. So it wasn't easy. There was a lot of problems dealing with the provincial government, with the ESQ, the municipal government, which really didn't understand our point of view about our experience in pandemics and our historical losses by these pandemics of the past. So the lessons we learned is that we need to take extreme measures, and that's what we did. So fighting off the provincial, fighting off the municipal, and also with the ESQ, which I think the biggest help they ever gave us was that they didn't interfere with our efforts to protect our community. So as you know, roadblocks were set up at the end of Oka, on St. Germain, at English Point, limiting all access to this community. So despite all that, there were threats to the ACT team, not only by citizens of Oka or outside influences, but also from inside. So they didn't have it easy, putting up with harsh weather, long hours, and really a difficult time for each and every one of them. But you know what? There was something that came out of it as well. The ACT team did promote a better relation with a lot of people, not just here inside, but around Oka. The citizens of Oka were pretty angry that even their own governments had basically left them to this pandemic until we took action. Our ACT members were given coffee, muffins, donuts, and several thanks by citizens of the whole region. So that was really encouraging. Now, to prove my point about the relationships, there was a survey that was sent out, and out of that survey, 80% of not only community members here, but in Oka, were in favor of the efforts that the ERU was conducting on behalf of everybody in the region. So this was not a question of Mohawk and non-Mohawk. It was a question of human beings facing the same threat. And in so doing, I think a better relationship came out of that. Maybe not at the political level, but everything else, it was encouraging. Now, the ERU had to manage many questions. Opening the schools, closing the schools, which programs, getting the resources necessary to buy equipment, laptops and printers and whatever we needed to provide our administration to work from home. Taking into consideration some of our employees' age and their underlying conditions. So specific accommodations had to be made everywhere. So the ERU spent day after day after day managing every question possible. And their dedication to this community is, to me, is unquestionable. The long hours that they put in and the hard questions they had to answer, coming up with solutions to almost impossible problems. So we kept on going like this throughout the summer. Once the government of Quebec decided they were going to open up the economy come June 1st. So we had to act as well, taking in full consideration that because of the commerce that we have on our territory recently with the cannabis was bringing in large amounts of customers into our territory. As a matter of fact, the ACT team turned around somewhere, I think it was in a half a day, close to 5,000 vehicles. So it gave you an idea of how much traffic was coming through here. So when we opened up, it was a big concern that community spread was just a matter of time. So the ERU went out to all the businesses, helping to provide equipment, hand sanitizers, like floor markings within the businesses, and trying to offer any assistance possible to try to limit the infection starting with the businesses. So a lot was done there. Now, this wouldn't have been possible without the federal government's help. The federal government did allocate the funding necessary, and I think went above and beyond to make sure that Kanesatake had the resources to protect itself. Despite we have no policing service or any fire services, we did get out of this pretty well. Now, like the ACT team patrolling our community, it wasn't just the virus. You look at some recent storms where, power lines were taken out by fallen trees. The ACT team was there to help with the traffic. There was also this one story where a little 10-year-old boy or 8-year-old boy was taken by his disturbed father and was wandering around here and was possibly going to take the boy God knows where. The little boy hadn't eaten in a couple of days and was only dressed in his underwear. So they came up to the ACT team, and the man was acting deranged with the little boy. And the ACT team right away called up the emergency services, kept the man calm, acted in a professional manner, and in my opinion, and many opinions, saved that little boy's life. There was also recently an accident involving one of our band members. Had it not been for the ACT team and their response, the initial response of that accident, the band member was found later on in a gully. Had it not been for them looking for him, he probably would have died in that gully. So the ACT team, I think, deserves a much greater thanks from our community for what they've done since this started. The ERU deserves a huge thanks. thank you. And instead, they got some pretty harsh criticism, I think, which was undeserved. Accusations and just it was undeserved, and still is to most parts. Now, I wanted to thank all of them. I wish I could give a medal to each one of the ACT members. I wish I could give one to all the staff members who came in and did their jobs above and beyond despite the threat of this virus. I mean, our finance team, our public works, our education, our health center, everyone working together with one common goal. And you doing your share, sanitizing your hands, putting your mask, social distancing, you help limit the amount of infections within our community. It was a collective, combined effort. Now the vaccines are coming out. We're possibly going to see a change in our strategy. Things are going to have to wind down. But I think we're still at least a good 6 months to a year away from winding things down completely. So we still have to keep our efforts up for a little bit longer. Now, the ERU, under the direction, under the leadership of IC Patricia Mayer, they've dealt with some, like I said, impossible situations at times. So my thanks to each and every one of them. Howie McCumber, Johanna McCumber, Christine Mayer, Marie-Claude Bernard, Bobby Bonspiel, spokesperson, Ian Prefontaine in our communications, because communications were very, very important during this time. And communications combined with all the efforts of everyone at the table saved lives, I'm sure of it. Joyce Bonspiel from KHC, sitting there on behalf of her organization. Maggie Mayo. Maggie was amazing conducting and directing the ACT team. With her experience in policing, 27, 28 years within the Kahnawake Police Force, combined with the experience we had at the table, I can't thank them enough. So, to the whole ERU that I just mentioned, Nyawak Goa, and I can't say it enough. You helped save a lot of lives during this past year. And I saw the sacrifices and the heartaches that you brought to the table at times when we did our briefings. Despite I'm ex officio, I don't have a vote. I tried to give my opinion, my experience, and I saw things and heard things that any human being, I think, would have cracked under that kind of pressure. But the support they gave, that I saw them give each other, was amazing. I wish our community could come together like this. I wish we could just put aside some of the differences, because we did at the beginning of this. There were members of the ERU that we had some dynamics there that didn't seem like it was going to work out. But you know what? They were professional, and you know what? They built a friendship that's going to last the rest of their lives. All of us. So please, when you see the members of the ERU, thank them for the efforts on your behalf, because they more than deserve it. So everybody had a huge part to play. You look at just the food security, there was the ACT team, our administration, ERU, but you know what? One of the biggest efforts that we saw was at the food security. Started off with almost nothing. Then started getting in donations of food of all kinds. And then starting to prepare the meals, Meals on Wheels, which serviced our most vulnerable, at least a couple of meals per day during the height of the pandemic. There were food giveaways. And as a matter of fact, it created the food bank that we see now for those in need. So a big no-go for them as well, because their efforts helped our members stay in isolation so they don't have to go and expose themselves unnecessarily or too many times unnecessarily at grocery stores or dépanneurs. So the efforts, I can't thank you enough for that. You deserve a very big thank you from this community. Now, there was also our finance team. When we came out of the lockdown, there were many businesses here that were suffering. They had lost a lot of revenue. And we're not talking just the cannabis stores or cigarette stores. We're talking about all our businesses within Kanesatake receiving some compensation for their losses. So I really do appreciate the efforts of our finance department on that issue. Your efforts, I'm sure, are greatly appreciated. And again, to you too, Nyawagoa, for everything you've done. Another department that I really need to thank was our social assistants, with Mary Simon and Josh Nolet, working tirelessly on their cases within the community. We were able to give our I guess economically more vulnerable people a little extra money so that they could buy more supplies, and again reducing the need to go to grocery stores, dépanneurs, so that they can go through the isolation through this pandemic a little bit easier. So again, to Mary and Josh, Nyawagoa, for everything you've done for those that needed you. Also, outside of the pandemic efforts, there are other departments that I simply have to say Nyawagoa to them for continuing on with their services to our community. Most notably, Economic Development Department continued on despite the pandemic. Our Crow Department, our education, I have to thank specifically, again, the teachers who continue on during this difficult time. The janitorial staff that supports our buildings as well. So there are many departments, language and culture, environment department continued on. So to all of you, Nyawagoa, for continuing on in the service of Kanesatake. There's also our Lands and Estates that continued on with performing its services for community members. So to all, Nyawagoa. Now, all of this, all these efforts, KHC, ERU, ACT team, all the different departments I mentioned, this wouldn't have been possible without the cooperation and support of MCK chiefs. I know there have been some problems within MCK, but you know what? In the end, it all began there. Had it not been for the chiefs recognizing the emergency at hand, all this wouldn't have been possible. So to all fellow chiefs, Nyawagoa, and you have this at least to be proud of, that it all started with you. Nyawagoa to you all. So I appreciate your attention, and I'm looking forward to giving you more information, points of view, in my next capsules, because our efforts they're not over yet. but we will get through it. We are getting through it. Yaman, go for your attention. Anna.